Whether you're a Jets or a Giant fan, there ain't one quarterback in New York that gives either one of y'all confidence, especially the one that's pouting all the time in green. I'll tell you about it in just a second here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You got that right. Welcome into the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I'm the host, Tony the Barber Wiggins, joined by my brother, Locked On NFL expert David Harrison. And on today's episode, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk in the third segment about how Jared Goff was superb with that game plan, but it's sustainable, especially against good teams. Right in the middle, we're going to talk about the Bengals. They had a stellar defense for the last few years under Big Lou, and now all of a sudden it's like they can't stop anybody. But we're going to kick off talking about Aaron Rodgers and how he doesn't look happy with Robert Saleh and how that all might turn out. But before we do that, we appreciate you making us the first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you tune in again to Locked On NFL tomorrow morning for the madman Tyler Rowland. For more NFL coverage, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. FanDuel is the absolute truth, man. Make sure you head on over to FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I ain't going to be able to get started unless I sit here and say what is up and what is happening to my brother from another mother, David Harrison. What's going on, Doc?
What's up, man? What's up? I appreciate the intro. I'm happy to be home. Had a good week in Arizona. The Washington Commanders came away with a win, 2-0 on the road trip, but always happy to be back in Virginia and back doing this with you.
Yeah, I brag about your team when the team that I cover ain't giving me a whole bunch to brag about. I tell you what, though, up in New York City, there's always a lot of expectations, and especially when it comes to the Jets getting a new quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. You know, last year they thought they were thinking Super Bowl. We got this great defense. We got all of this. It took 4 plays. Now he's back. He's looked good sometimes. Some other times hasn't looked so good. I think everybody wants to fire Nathaniel Hackett. It's funny. Nathaniel Hackett was the same guy that everybody criticized at his last 2 stops. And David, he's still up there in New York, and I don't think people are happy with him or the head coach.
No, man. I mean, and you know, the thing about Aaron Rodgers that Aaron Rodgers missed when he went to the New York Jets in the first place, and the thing that the New York Jets missed when they brought in Aaron Rodgers and they brought in the personnel that he wanted, including a coach, is twofold, right? Because let's be clear. Let's remember why they did what they did. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers did what they did because of what the Buccaneers and Tom Brady did. Like, exactly. Bottom line, if the Tom Brady thing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers isn't as successful as it is, the Jets and Aaron Rodgers probably never happens. So Tom Brady came in and he said, I want my personnel. I want my people in place. What did that mean? It meant Rob Gronkowski for a period of time, meant Antonio Brown, and it meant we're going to go out in the draft and we're going to get you a really good pass blocker and we're going to do all these things. What it didn't mean, however, is you're going to become the head coach. Like, at the end of the day, Bruce Arians still ran that Buccaneers team. If they gave in to Tom Brady, it's because Bruce Arians approved them giving in to Tom Brady. With the New York Jets, if you're a Jets fan and you want your coach fired, that means Aaron Rodgers, right? That doesn't mean Robert Saleh, because Robert Saleh is not calling the shots out there. And now listen, if Robert Saleh made the decision that I'm not going to be the man in charge, that I'm going to be below Aaron Rodgers, then maybe you should fire Robert Saleh. And, you know, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, right? Like, I know, you know, Robert Saleh is the head coach of the New York Jets, but everybody sees how much control Aaron Rodgers has of this thing. So when you're a quarterback and you're naturally in a leadership position, like, people can say all they want that, like the Washington Commanders say all the time, like, we're not telling Jade he's got to go be a leader of this team. If you're a quarterback, you're a leader of the team, period. Like, that just is what it is. But if you're going to give him the additional leadership influence that the New York Jets have given Aaron Rodgers, right, with bringing in your offensive coordinator, bringing in your players, playing your style of football, all these things, then you need to make sure that the dude you're bringing in is a general. And Aaron Rodgers is not a general. Aaron Rodgers is the military football equivalent to a fighter pilot. And look, fighter pilots do a lot of sexy things, and they make a lot of highlight plays, but they're not commanders while they're flying the jets to tie it all together, right?
I got you.
Aaron Rodgers does one thing, wins football games. When that doesn't happen, Aaron Rodgers doesn't do a whole lot else that benefits your team. And that's what the Jets are going through right now.
Yep, you're right. And listen, if y'all think that we're just making this stuff up, my man John Butchko covers them every single day, and listen to what he says and tell me we're wrong.
As you're probably aware, this current Jets team has a lot of problems it's dealing with. I think at this point, this team's underperforming a little bit, and there are some problems. There's only so much you can do in season. A lot of this is just going to come down to hopefully a lot of guys playing better. But I do think there are a couple tweaks the Jets could make with the way they run their system, with some of their personnel decisions. And I know the number one change a lot of you want to make is you want to fire some coaches. You want to fire Robert Saleh. You want to fire Nathaniel Hackett. And I'm sympathetic to your frustrations. But I think, we might want to come up with a backup plan in case the Jets don't fire their coaches. Because as much as I want to see some changes, especially Hackett, I mean, that's the change that could actually potentially make an impact. I don't think the Jets have a lot of great coaches on their offensive staff, but surely one of them could call plays at a higher level than Hackett is. But I don't think the Jets are.
So to back up your point, that is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers was the person that was responsible for bringing in Nathaniel Hackett. We'll transition from him. They got to get their act together, but the Giants, there's a quarterback down there that doesn't have the type of power that Aaron Rodgers has, but you could end up seeing it be the same result, meaning pressure being put on the coach and getting a coach fired. The difference is Aaron Rodgers is a really, really good player. Daniel Jones is just okay. Listen to what Patricia Traynor has to say about the confidence level and whether or not other players can sense that Daboll just doesn't have the confidence in Daniel Jones.
What have we learned about the New York Giants after the first month of the season? Is it possible? And I only mention this because, I think Daboll kind of almost alluded to it a little bit in his post-game press conference. Do you think maybe the confidence in the quarterback? So do you think maybe that is why Daboll has been a little bit more conservative than what we've seen him in the past, because he doesn't, I don't know, maybe doesn't trust isn't the right word, but maybe his trust is waning a little bit in Daniel Jones?
That could be, Patty. Could be. But the flip side of it is if you go to Pro Football Focus and you look at the number of 20-plus yard throws down the field and all of that, entering Sunday, Daniel Jones had thrown more passes of that depth, I think, than almost every quarterback in the league. There's only a couple guys that had actually thrown more deep balls than Jones, but you can make whatever you want out of the numbers.
David, I know you watch tape, and he pointed out analytics. I say numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the whole story. What's the real story with the way Daboll called plays with Daniel Jones as his quarterback?
I mean, the team is clearly not comfortable with Daniel Jones as a starting quarterback. I mean, you watch. Here's the thing: you watch Hard Knocks, offseason Hard Knocks, and you see the New York Giants this offseason were ready to move on from Daniel Jones. Now the problem is you have this contract that you're married to, and all these things, and that's the kind of thing that can get people fired. My question, as far as the future of the New York Giants goes, to who pounded the table to get Daniel Jones that contract. Now he's like the 15th highest paid quarterback in the league. So let's not get crazy and talk about like he's getting like top 5 money or anything. But the bottom line is you invested in him instead of opening the door for yourself to have opportunities to invest in other quarterbacks. Like, I don't know, a guy like Bo Nix, who was on the board. And look, I love Malik Neighbors, and I know the New York Giants love Malik Neighbors and the future that he presents and everything else. But everybody says in this league, if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. So yeah, the top 3 are off the board. JJ McCarthy's within striking distance. Bo Nix is within striking distance. And if you go get either one of those guys with Tyrod Taylor starting instead of Daniel Jones, but the bottom line is you have this contract situation. So to me, if Brian Daboll pounded the table and said, Daniel Jones is our guy, re-sign him to this contract, if Joe Shane did the same thing, that's on both of these guys. Yep. And if I'm the ownership group in New York, if I'm the owner in New York, I'm looking at both of them saying, hey guys, this decision is on you, and the course of this franchise is on you, because I look at this franchise as one that didn't know what direction you're going to go in. You let Saquon Barkley walk out the door, but you're not rebuilding. You marry yourself to Daniel Jones, but you're not building a championship caliber team. So what are we doing here, right? It's almost like Nick Sirianni standing on the sideline. What are we doing here? And nobody really seems to have a direction. But now you're married to Daniel Jones, and you're in a situation where you've got to work with what you've got. And meanwhile, next year, who knows who's going to be making the picks? I think Brian Dable probably still sticks around, but I don't know if many other people survive this season.
Yeah, and it adds injury to insult when you look up at Saquon Barkley having a good year, even though the Eagles kind of faltered a little bit. And then Xavier McKinney, who you let go to Green Bay, also having a very, very stellar year, and you kept the wrong person. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pivot over here in the second segment. We're going to talk about the surprising Bengals. Over the last couple of years, everyone has talked about the offensive line of Cincinnati, but now that's not the problem. It's actually the defense. We'll get with the guys from Locked On Bengals that tell us exactly what the problem is. We'll do it in segment 2 in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Man, it is time for me to let you know about today's sponsor, which is Prize Picks, man. Y'all know what Prize Picks is. All you got to do is get 2 to 6 player projections, go more or less, put them together, and guess what? You get to win you some money because Prize Picks is the absolute best. All right, let me let you know what's going on with Prize Picks. All you got to do, man, is just go to prizepicks.com, right, and look at those player projections. And I think if you think you can beat it, then you can win you some money. All right, sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. You think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards this week? Christian McCaffrey run for more than 75.5? I guarantee you he won't. I guarantee you he won't because I don't think he's going to be there, right? That's right, because he's out. But see, on Prize Picks, you can go in there and you can make all of the player projections you want and win you some money. So here's what you do. Go to prizepicks.com. Download today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On NFL with my man, the NFL expert, David Harrison. We ran it down in the first segment about some quarterbacks, and now we're going to talk some defense because we don't want to be too one-sided. Cincinnati has always seemed to have offensive line issues. One year they went all the way to the Super Bowl with said issues, and then they got the quarterback banged up, and then they faltered a little bit last year. You get the quarterback back, everyone thinks they're just going to continue to play the way they have been. Lou Anarumo is one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the league, but things aren't really working out right now for him, David.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not doing well. And the Cincinnati Bengals have given up no fewer than 24 points to their opponents in 3 of these games this year. And look, 24 points is kind of the floor, right? Like in today's NFL with the scoring, with the passing, right, and all that stuff, 24 points is always kind of the line I look at. Like when I'm picking games, people ask me what I think is going to win. I kind of go with my gut. I'm like, who do I think is more likely to exceed the 24-point mark in this matchup? And that's kind of the team that I tend to lean with. And when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals, like outside of one kind of fluke offensive performance where they only scored 10 points against the New England Patriots, and even that took a fluke fumble at the goal line by a tight end going in for a touchdown that theoretically would have given you a 17-16 win in week 1. Outside of that, this defense is just faltered. But look, this isn't new. Ultimately, like there was talk not that long ago about Lou Anarumo getting head coaching opportunities. Right. Cincinnati Bengals are 27th in the league right now in scoring defense. They're 21st in the league in scoring defense last year. So yeah, like the Joe Burrow injury was big, but when you look at the fact that this team without Joe Burrow for a large part of the season still won 9 games and had the 21st ranked scoring defense and still won 9 games, it kind of shows you just how much the offense really kind of picked up the slack even without Joe there. And so now even with Joe back, you still have a defense that in a lot of ways has actually gotten worse this season. And I mean, the saying, right? Defense wins championship. If you've seen the know-it-all commercial on television, defense still wins championships. So this team doesn't have a championship caliber team as long as they don't have a defense.
And we're not the only ones to believe it. My man Jake over with Locked On Bengals, he let you know exactly how he feels about the Bengals defense.
The Cincinnati Bengals defense simply isn't good enough. It's not good at anything right now. I'm Jake Lisco from the Locked On Bengals podcast, and the Bengals lose an embarrassing game to the Washington Commanders. They don't get a single stop, and it comes down to the fact that their defensive line, depleted by injury in their defense, could not disrupt the passing game of the Washington Commanders at all. The offense got mostly what they wanted throughout this game. They have their red zone issues. They're not perfect. But this game comes down to the defensive line's inability to disrupt Jaden Daniels, and he was able to stand in there, essentially play 7-on-7 football, and the secondary couldn't hold up at all. They even stopped the run a little bit in this game, but could not stop the Commanders at any point when it counted. And even if the offense puts up points, well, that's not good enough when you can't stop the Commanders even once.
Yeah, so they got some issues on that defense. I don't know what the fix is. Maybe they're missing DJ Reader. They're 2 years removed from Jesse Bates, and they probably haven't done a good enough job to fulfill that. Or maybe they just built themselves to beat the Chiefs because they play really good against KC, but they just don't play well against anybody else.
Honestly, I mean, it looks a little bit like a team that's externally motivated, right? Like teams that play down to their opponent, but then also play up to their opponent. Those are teams that are externally motivated. They're not teams that inside the building motivate each other, motivate themselves to go out to be the best version of themselves. They need that Kansas City Chiefs presence or that Baltimore Ravens presence, or even this last week in their win, they need that everybody's counting you out storyline to wake up. And honestly, that would explain, right? We've talked about this with the Bengals, like, how many years in a row now? It's like 3 or 4 seasons now where they started off 0-2, and then they're like, yeah, but we always come back from this. Why? Because you need that storyline of everybody doubting you and everybody sleeping on you and everything else. It's kind of like Eminem. Like Eminem goes away for years, and then some kid with a microphone wants to talk trash, and all of a sudden Eminem's awake again. Like, you need that. This Bengals team needs that external influence, and unless they have that external influence, they're not going to show up for the game. That's a coaching problem. Like, as much as that's not X's and O's, that is a coaching problem. That is a Zach Taylor problem.
Yep. And I appreciate the Slim Shady reference, by the way, here on Locked On NFL, up in the barbershop. I'm loving me some Slim Shady. But yeah, and then they allowed the Red Rooster or the Red Rocket or whatever they call Andy Dalton to come in there this week. And even though they won the game, they actually let Carolina show some life. So this is a problem that has extended beyond this past week. This has been going on, like you said, all season long. Something that I caught an observation of the other day, and I got wind, and you can check this out at Locked On Chargers. They did a show questioning Greg Roman. And I thought about it. Greg Roman has been beaten up since 2016 after the whole Jim Harbaugh, Colin Kaepernick thing. Well, Greg Roman was in Baltimore, got beat up there too, and got questioned by a lot of people. I want you to hear what my man Daniel Wade has to say about the way this offense has progressed, and then tell me if Jim Harbaugh had a little bit of a blind spot for familiarity when he came back to the NFL.
The shorthanded Chargers gave themselves a chance against the Chiefs, but the offense fell apart, and they came up short. This is Daniel Wade here from Locked On Chargers, coming to you after the 17-10 loss in the game where the Chargers had a 10-0 lead after 2 Kansas City turnovers in the first quarter, but unfortunately, the Chargers failed to score in the remaining 3 quarters. And Justin Herbert was out there with a high ankle sprain, missing his top 2 tackles, Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, but it has to be better than what it was for most of that game. The running game was non-existent, averaging 2.3 yards per carry, and the Chargers had so many penalties on the offensive side that totally derailed anything they had going on. They had 2 chances to score deep in Kansas City territory in the second half, and it turned into a missed Cameron Dicker field goal and a turnover on downs on 4th down inside the 10-yard line. Shout out to Jesse Minter's defense. They were awesome in this game, held the Kansas City Chiefs to 17, and if you do that, you should win that game. But for the full game breakdown, make sure to check out the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
David, you're missing those offensive linemen. You'd expect some shortcomings when it comes to production, but Wade said they could have won the game anyway, and they fell short.
Yeah, I mean, look, the hiring of Greg Roman kind of confused me from the jump. I mean, one Harbaugh brother moved on from him. I don't know what the one Harbaugh said to the other Harbaugh to convince him that he's my guy. And I know the Jim has more of a run history and style anyway. But, you know, in today's NFL, anybody that watches the NFL knows you've got to be able to do both. You can't just do one. You've got to be able to attack this team through the, or opposing teams through the air, on the ground. If you're going to attack them on the ground, you've got to be the best on the ground rushing attack. that the NFL has ever seen. And the Baltimore Ravens had that for a little while, right? In 2022, they were 11th in rushing. In 2020, overall, they were 5th in rushing, and with just using their running backs. That's just using your running backs. But on top of that, you have Lamar stinking Jackson. Guess what the Los Angeles Chargers don't have? They don't have Lamar Jackson. They don't even have Lamar Jackson light. They don't have Lamar Jackson, the rookie version. They got a good quarterback, but he's not going to run all over the field. But despite that fact, this team is dead last in dropbacks with 104 through 4 weeks. They trail the New Orleans Saints, who have Alvin Kamara. They trail the Indianapolis Colts, who have Jonathan Taylor. And you're doing this with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. And I love J.K. Dobbins. I got Ohio State helmets in my background. I love J.K., but he is not Jonathan Taylor. He certainly is not Alvin Kamara. And this Baltimore Ravens offense that they brought to Los Angeles to do with the Chargers, look, in 2020, when they're 5th in rushing, they're also 2nd overall in scoring defense. In 2022, when they're 11th in rushing with the running backs, they're 3rd in scoring defense. In 2021, when they're 24th in running back rushing, they're 19th in scoring defense. Right. So is it Greg Roman or is it the defense in Baltimore? It's always been the defense in Baltimore. That's why they can lean on the run, because they have those defenses. When those defenses falter, those things don't go well. The Los Angeles Chargers, like Wade just said, the defense did okay against Kansas City Chiefs, but this offense is not built to run a Greg Roman style system. And look, if it didn't work with Lamar Jackson, why would you think it's going to work with Justin Herbert?
And also, why would you go back to it like 10, 12 years later? I don't know about that math, but it's been a long time since Jim Harbaugh has been coaching in the National Football League. I think it was 2013 or something.
Yeah.
Things change, man. Things change. Yeah. And you talked about Lamar Jackson. He also had Colin Kaepernick when he was in San Francisco.
Right.
So that made everything go a little bit better. I tell you what, speaking of running the ball, the Detroit Lions, they know how to protect the quarterback. Y'all keep talking about Jared Goff if you want to. They got a coach that knows exactly what to dial up for them, and they look very, very impressive. The question is that sustainable when they play a good team? We'll talk about it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Y'all know that because I've been saying it for now about 5 or 6 years that FanDuel is the absolute truth and it helps you enjoy the action even more. But you can start with a big return on FanDuel this year. You know, when you're playing and you get a hunch, if you're looking at all the bets you've made, you get a hunch that something is going on in the middle of the game. You need to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. It's all on the same page where you bet. No refreshing, no going back, no losing the window that you're already in. I'm telling you. And you'll get started with all this with $200 in bonus bets that's guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. That's right, $200 guaranteed whether you win or lose when you place your first $5 bet with FanDuel. So make sure you go to FanDuel.com, which is America's #1 sportsbook. All right, segment 3 here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Or if you listen to your Locked On podcast with the team that you cover and make them your first listen, make sure you come on over here and make us your second listen here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you tune in to Tyler the Madman in the morning. He'll drop it for you, man, and he'll drop an episode for you, rather, and he'll give you all that you want, a double shot of espresso early in the morning, and then slide on over to the barbershop with me. Got a different guest every single day of the week. It's always my man David Harrison on Wednesday, and you can check us out. Make sure wherever you get your podcast, on our YouTube page at Locked On NFL, or wherever you listen to your podcast. So I watched the Detroit Lions, and it was a very entertaining game. They gave a bunch of yards against the Seattle Seahawks, but I was very, very impressed with how they insulated their quarterback, who had an extremely accurate night, 18 out of 18 for 292 and 3 touchdowns. But I noticed how he was protected by that running game, and they really, really did build a nice game plan up for him. I'm going to let Matt Derry tell you exactly what happened, and he's going to ask a question, and David, when we come back, I want you to answer it.
We've talked about this for weeks. What's wrong with Jared Goff? Why is he not himself? Did the money get to his head? All these things that people can speculate on. I don't believe any of that. He just hasn't been crisp. He hasn't been sharp. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, he did not miss a throw. a perfect 18 out of 18, which is an NFL record, 292 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a passer rating of 155.8, a tremendous performance from Goff. Stood in the pocket, made big throws when he had to, threw the ball away when he had to, took a sack instead of throwing an interception when he had to. You just loved what you saw from this football team this evening on the offensive side. Everything was clicking.
Are they the best team in the NFC right now?
That's tough.
My
But they're
man's
certainly
thinking
one of
about
the
it.
best teams in the NFC right now, right? Like I love watching the Detroit Lions play football. And the thing about it is, I remember it was early last season. We were on Locked On NFL. We were on Fridays at that time. And the Detroit Lions had just got done playing a game. I honestly can't remember if they won or they lost, but I basically said the way that the Detroit Lions are playing right now, they're only going to go as far as Jared Goff can take them, and Jared Goff is not going to take them very far by himself. And I'll tell you, like this season's performance, and I don't mean to do this as like shade towards Jared Goff because I think they're doing a really good job, but it really just shows that like the more that is on Jared Goff himself, the worse off the Detroit Lions are going to be. They need that defense to be preventing points on the other side, getting takeaways, getting sacks, and all those things. They need these running backs to really be clicking. And at the time that I said that, Jahmyr Gibbs was not being used at the rate that he needed to be used, and that he's being used now when both guys are healthy, and they're kind of going back and forth between these guys. Now the Detroit Lions, and over the course of that season, the Detroit Lions started doing that, and that's where you see this new version of the Detroit Lions. And Jared Goff is getting paid not because he's the engine of the car, but because he's holding the steering wheel. And as long as we only ask him to hold the steering wheel, we don't ask him to be the gas or be the spark plug, we're going to be okay. So if you want to talk about how do you show that your team is better than the Detroit Lions, you got to figure out how to shut down those backs. You got to figure out how to make Jared Goff make decisions and not have easy throws. You got to put the game on Jared Goff. That's how you beat the Detroit Lions.
Good teams will make him do that too. Good teams will make you play left-handed. They'll find that thing that he doesn't do well, and they'll say, nope, you're going to do it all night, especially if those teams get the lead. He's got some competition in his own division with Green Bay and, of course, Minnesota. You know, with all the talk about Jaden Daniels, I think people start to forget a little bit about Caleb Williams. Well, you know what? That kid is actually learning a little bit, and he won a game the other day. And my man Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears is here to tell you all about it.
All of these are areas where Caleb is doing very well and getting better from week to week. He's calling protections better at the line of scrimmage. He's changing in and out of plays better. Like, he is operating this offense from like a pre-snap standpoint very, very well. For him individually, it's a lot of just dialing in some of the accuracy stuff downfield and then not getting baited in some stupid mistakes on the interception, and, you know, still being diligent in the pocket to not try and do too much heroic escapism. And sometimes he's getting better at just throwing the ball away too. But, you know, more of that is in Caleb Williams' future for sure. So then it comes down to, okay, as Caleb gets better, can the rest of the offense please get better around him?
I think you want him to play on schedule a little bit, but he's capable of doing it. But we fall in love with the new shiny thing, the kid that you cover up in Washington, Jaden Daniels, and rightfully so. But I don't think it's fair to forget about Caleb Williams and his progression as he gets a little bit older.
It's absolutely not fair. It's also not fair to not realize the difference between the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. And the difference is very, very clear. One team went out there and got a whole lot of weapons for their young quarterback. The other team went out there and revamped the entire offensive line for their quarterback. Listen, just this last week against the Arizona Cardinals, the Washington Commanders used 12 personnel every single play their first drive of the game, and it resulted in a rushing touchdown. The Chicago Bears, meanwhile, 2 weeks ago, they got Caleb Williams dropped back throwing the ball 50-plus times in a single game, and he doesn't have the offensive line to do it. Look, just this week, okay, they won. They beat the Los Angeles Rams. Congratulations. Caleb Williams looked a lot better. But Shane Waldron went to the Washington Commanders, went to the Cliff Kingsbury way of doing things. And I'm not saying that he did it intentionally, but basically he did what the Washington Commanders are doing. And ironically, he called a lot shorter passes. Caleb Williams was 15. This is Zebra Sports Technology, Next Gen Stats. Caleb Williams was 15 for 15 on passes under 15 air yards. He was 2 for 7 on passes over 15 air yards. Guess which variety of passes Caleb Williams was being asked to throw before this last week? Now, this week, he's being asked to throw a shorter game, a quicker game, And I'll tell you this too, just from a coaching standpoint, I think it's absolutely insane that you're asking your rookie quarterback to set protections. Like, this game from college to NFL is so much faster, so much more difficult. These defensive coordinators disguise things left and right intentionally to fool you. Unless you have a rookie center and a rookie quarterback, there is no reason to be having your rookie quarterback setting protections. That rookie center, look, dude, you're the veteran. You've been doing this for a little bit. You need to be the one we trust to set protections here. And so the fact that Caleb is not only trying to learn a system, not only trying to learn his teammates, not only trying to catch up to the speed, but also having to set protections against defense coordinators that are literally getting paid to fool young quarterbacks. I think Caleb Williams needs a lot more grace than maybe he's getting from some people. And yeah, I like the shift from Shane Waldron to a shorter passing attack, trying to lead to the deeper passing attack. That's the smart way to keep the ball moving while you try to keep your quarterback progressing towards those deeper shots. They'll come, but they're only going to come if he's on the field, and he's only going to be on the field if he's completing shorter passes that get first downs. Last thing I'll say, the Washington Commanders last week in their 42-14 win over the Arizona Cardinals, 5 explosive plays on offense. That's it. That's not a lot of explosive plays. That's it. They're grinding this thing out. They're being smart with their play call. They're giving their quarterback good, simple reads that he can complete and letting the ball carriers make plays after that. That's how you support a rookie quarterback.
That is how you support a rookie quarterback. You don't want him to play hero ball. You just want him to do things, that have to be done in order to move the team properly. This whole thing about him setting protections, and I just had to say this. They got guys dialing stuff up that were calling plays and dialing stuff up before he was even born. And you think he's going to come walk into the NFL and fool these old dudes? You got another thing coming. I tell you what, you don't have to get fooled by us, because you can come here every single day, twice a day here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you check out the AM show with Tyler Rowland tomorrow, and slide back through the barbershop here wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time here on Locked On We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL. You guys take care of yourself, and we'll see you next Wednesday, David. Thank you again for joining.